Thank you, Dr. Summers, for meeting with us today. And I wanted to congratulate you on being awarded the Ruth Kirstein Diversity in Science Award.
Thank you very much, Virginia.
So what was your aha moment that you realized that equality in sciences was an issue?
You know, I don't think it happened until I started on the faculty at UMBC. I was raised in the South, and I went to predominantly white schools. And at the time that I was in school, the country was going through some pretty difficult, dealing with some really difficult problems. There were, typically in the South, it wasn't uncommon to have fights in the high schools and, race-based problems. The president of UMBC really had to deal with issues. He's an African-American man who, when he was 12 years old, was locked in jail for organizing a youth march to protest basically the fact that one of his friends was killed in a church bomb. So they were tough times, and I was young and really didn't pay attention to, especially to the issues that minorities and women face in science until I started on the faculty at UMBC. And then it was because of my interactions with President Hrabowski that I became more aware of the issues that people face.
So have you ever felt underrepresented or marginalized?
I wouldn't say that I've ever really felt marginalized. I think we all carry around our insecurities. Everybody does. In some ways they can be motivating. I talk to my students, not just the minority students, but others as well. They see really smart people around them. They see people winning awards. And sometimes they'll think, I'm not quite that smart. And so the key, I think, is to use those insecurities to your advantage so that you prepare more and not to let them become debilitating. And so, like I said, I think most of us carry those insecurities around, but they can actually help us in the end if we use that to our advantage.
Okay, and why do you think that diversity and equality in the sciences is something worth working toward?
Oh, there are so many reasons. I would say that one of the big ones to me is sickled cells, for example, were discovered at the turn of the century. And it was 50 years before the federal government spent its first penny to try to understand the problem and to try to deal with it. So part of the reason is so that we have an educated public and so that everybody in the U.S. Understands what the issues are, and that people from minority groups can play a role in deciding how research is conducted and what gets studied and what money gets spent on what kinds of problems. And then, of course, just to have role models so that people in the classes don't feel marginalized, or they can look up to somebody and say, hey, if this person can make it at that level, there's really no reason why I couldn't do it as well. And so those are just two examples. But I would say the health disparities is one that motivates me mostly because I've had several students and friends who had parents that were a very young age, in their 40s, that passed away, I think prematurely, because they belong to a group that typically, for example, would have heart disease or diabetes at a much younger age than their white friends, for example.
Excuse me. And so what challenges do you think the nation will face in trying to move toward this equality in the sciences or STEM fields in general?
Well, I think that a lot is happening, and I feel very good about the changes that are occurring across the country. Every time I give a talk at my Howard Hughes meetings, at my science talk, I always show a picture of my lab, and because of what's happened at UMBC, we have large numbers of minorities that are working in my group, and at every meeting, Hughes investigators, and these are probably the busiest scientists there are, right? They've got so much going on. They come up to me and they say, wow, they wish they had the pipeline that I have. They wish that they could be doing the kinds of things that I'm doing. And what's happening now is institutions are coming to UMBC and saying, what do we need to do to try to replicate what you're doing? And so I think that there's real interest, especially among my peers, my colleagues, that would like to do more. And it's just a matter now of institutions deciding, yeah, we are going to make inclusion a priority. And quite a few of them have come to us now and asked us for help. So I'm encouraged that the country is going in the right direction. It doesn't seem to always go as fast as you'd like, but it is moving in the right direction. You see it really in women in science. We see many, many more women earning biochemical degrees or biology degrees. We don't see the changes at the full professor level yet, but I think that we're going in the right direction.
And so what advice do you give those institutions that come to you?
Part of it is don't be afraid to reach out to people. Don't be afraid to go into the high schools and say, we are going to have a program that's not afraid to talk about the issues. We're going to have faculty get together and be supportive. We're going to hold the bar high for everybody, but we're going to provide the environment that will allow you to achieve at that very high level. And that's really what has made a difference for us. It's not uncommon for students to come into their entry-level classes and struggle on that first exam. And maybe they were raised in a household where they had a grandmother or a parent who really cared about education, so they knew what it took to do well in high school. But then they get in that first big chemistry class or biology class, a huge class, and all these pre-meds, and all of a sudden they're not the best person in the class, or they may have done pretty poorly by their standards on that first exam. And so it's easy for some people to start to think, you know what, maybe society's right, maybe I don't belong here. And especially if you have faculty that are used to seeing that kind of behavior, very small numbers of minorities doing well, then they don't expect a higher level of behavior, and they don't approach the students the way they could. And so I think a lot of it is making sure that the faculty understand what the real potential of these students can be and how they can reach out to them in a way that's comfortable.
And so do you feel that as ASB&B awards this Ruth Kirstein Diversity in Science Award, that they are effectively increasing awareness in issues of diversity and equality in the STEM fields?
I feel that they are. I'm sharing this award with our president, Freeman Hrabowski, and it's completely appropriate because, as I said, when I started my faculty position, this wasn't what I had in mind doing with my career. But it's just been so unbelievably rewarding for me. And I think that there are a lot of faculty that would like to be doing the kinds of things that we're doing. And so I think that this basically gives us a forum to talk about the issues and the approaches that we've taken, and maybe to make connections with people. And then also to serve as a platform so that students in the audience might see, hey, here's a place where large numbers of minorities are not just surviving, but they're actually at the top of the class and doing well and going to the top graduate programs. And so I think that looking at success stories can be really helpful for people.
And do you feel that this awareness is being extended beyond biochemistry?
Yeah, I think it is. I think all areas of STEM are paying attention. Now, there are some that have a lot further to go. In engineering, for example, you see so few women being retained as engineers. In chemistry, the numbers are lower than they are, for example, in biology. But we're making progress.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time and your wisdom.
Pleasure. Well, thank you very much.